I call the September 16, 2024 regular meeting of the Union County Board of Commissioners to order. At this time, I would like to recognize Commissioner David Williams for the invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For all those so inclined, please bow your heads in prayer. Lord, we humbly ask for your guidance. Grant us the wisdom to make decisions that will best serve our community and its citizens. Help us to listen with understanding and goodwill, to speak with charity and restraint, and to seek the truth. May our deliberations be productive and our resolutions be fair. Inspire us to work together in harmony, even when there is honest disagreement. Remind us that our actions today will shape the future of our community. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. Amen.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is informal comments from the community. Each speaker must address the board from the lectern and begin their remarks by giving their name, stating whether they are residents of Union County, indicating the municipality within which they reside, if any. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make remarks. A tone may sound at the conclusion of your remarks. A speaker may not yield any of his or her time to another speaker. Speakers may not discuss matters which are the subject of public hearings, and they must be courteous in their language and presentation. Restatements or repetitive comments by the same speaker, whether at the same or separate meetings, may be ruled out of order and terminated by the chair. Personal attacks will not be tolerated. Speakers may leave written comments and/or supporting documents, if any, with the clerk to the board. Our first speaker is Jim Hill.
Thank you. I didn't realize I'd be first. Again, my name is Jim Hill. I'm a Union County resident. I live in Wesley Chapel. I'm also the president of the Homeowners Association for the Courtyards of Wesley Chapel, which is an age-restricted 55-plus community. We have about 230 residents and 136 single-family homes, and we are located across the street from the Southwest County Library, Cuthbertson Middle School, and Cuthbertson High School. There are two other subdivisions, much larger. Lawson subdivision is on one side of us. It's about 1,000 homes, I think, about 2,000 residents, and then Champion Forest, another 400 or 500 residents. So this is an issue that affects, I want to say, 3,000 Union County residents. And if you're not familiar with Cuthbertson Road, it's a two-lane road. It's about 3 miles long. As I said, it's home to the high school, it's home to the middle school, it's home to the library, and it's home to another 3,000 Union County residents. I'm sure you've seen the newspaper articles. I'm sure you've seen the TV news. I was actually on the TV news last summer talking and the other several thousand residents every day, because the only way in or out of where we live is on Cuthbertson Road. In the morning, it's not uncommon. The road's only 3 miles long, but in the morning, it's not uncommon that it'll back up for 1.5 miles from the high school to Newtown Road. My neighbors, some of them have reported waiting as much as 15 minutes to make a left turn out of our homes, and another 15 minutes to get just to the Newtown Road intersection. So it's about a 30-minute trip to travel 1.5 miles. In 2020, the Board of County Commissioners approved a conditional zoning request for 225 acres of land near the intersection of Cuthbertson Road and Providence Road. And this was a conditional zoning, and it allowed for the construction of 360 age-restricted single-family homes and 93 market-rate townhomes, so a total of an additional 453 housing units, all exiting, onto Cuthbertson Road. And construction actually started in 2023. I don't know exactly where they are now, but they are well along in construction of those 453 units, well over halfway, I think. One of the conditions, as you probably know, for the rezoning was that the developer, David Weekley Homes, would construct a dedicated turn lane at the intersection of Cuthbertson Road and Newtown Road to address some of these traffic conditions. And I want to point out, it's a temporary measure, but it's much needed. The state, NCDOT, has plans to construct a roundabout at that intersection, I believe in 2027 or 2028, and you all approved some funding for that roundabout as well, so thank you for that, but, you know, it's 3 years away. So, if I could just have a second. So, in the spring, the county staff informed us that construction on the turn lane would start this summer. It sort of started, and then it stopped when school started, because as you know, the road, state law doesn't allow you to close the road of that size during the day, during school hours, so construction kind of stopped. As far as I know, hasn't gone anywhere. And I know the staff is working really hard on this, and so the only thing I want to ask you is put your collective heads together, find a way to force this to be completed now so that we don't have to suffer through another 9 months of construction or traffic delays until next summer. Thank you.
Our next speaker is, I believe it's Michelle Ball.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak. My name's Michelle Ball, and I live in the city of Monroe. I wanted to speak about an issue that's going on that's detrimental to the welfare of Union County. This past weekend, the Pride Festival was held in Union County for the 3rd year in a row. This year it was held at the Chestnut Square Park in the Indian Trail. We had a group outside peacefully protesting. There was also a group there with a bullhorn preaching hell and damnation, no mercy and no Jesus, and I was not part of that group. I was part of the group. We were handing out these little cards that has a QR code on it, and they can scan it. It says Jesus loves you and there is hope. In a group where suicide is so high, we felt like this was important to offer them. But we were told we couldn't go inside, and we were kept out of a taxpayer-funded public park. Thankfully, I was still able to give out 30 or 40 of these, so I was very thankful for that. But even if you're not a believer in Christ, it still hurts the soul of our county to see the indoctrination of children going into this festival. Listen, if I choose to commit adultery, I do not need a festival to celebrate it. I do not need to indoctrinate children with it. Hopefully this is just common sense that we can all agree on whether we're believers or not. It's despicable, and the ones in the authorities should have been the one keeping out the children. We could not document the usual things that take place in these festivals, but I guarantee they were playing nice so that they can come back next year. You can find thousands of videos of YouTube of their plans to take over our small communities and indoctrinate our children. At the national level, they are heard, and you can easily look these things up on YouTube. They're chanting, "We're here, we're queer, we're coming after your children." We need to believe them when they tell us they're doing that. If I were watching Union County and finding out about this threat to the family, I would not move here. Many families came to the park that day and were sickened by what was going on, and that they could not have a day there. Boys were told that they couldn't play football on the football field. We need to be a place that the family can come and not be threatened, because if this is allowed to continue, I guarantee it's in our schools and our libraries also. Our county cannot be trusted if this is the case. And I have a good relationship with the sheriff's department, but I also wanted to ask the situation about the security that took place there. They were dressed in their uniforms, and I'm sorry, my voice is going out. The sheriff cars were lining the sidewalk. I couldn't tell. I think they could have been hired by Pride for security, the Union County Pride, but I couldn't tell who was doing what and for her, and I wondered if we could get some clarification on that maybe from the sheriff's department. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sophia, is that Shabbat?
Hi, my name is Sophia Chabot, and I live in Waxhaw. I'm here today because of an incident that happened over the weekend, which concerns me. My husband was at an event, and he couldn't be here to speak, so I'm here speaking on his behalf. My husband attended a protest at the Chestnut Square Park and Indian Trail this past Saturday. The protest was against the all-age drag show, which was going to take place at the Union County Pride Festival at Chestnut Square Park. We both have attended peaceful protests like this before with Protect NC Kids. Once he arrived, he saw people who he knew protesting but didn't approach them because he wanted to be able to enter the park to observe the festival to see if there was anything sexually explicit for children as they have had in the past at their events. According to the Union County Pride Festival flyer, it said, and I quote, "Trespassers warning. The event organizer has the right to ask anyone to leave, such as any person previously trespassed, protesters, and anyone who causes problems today," end quote. So that's why my husband entered the park alone with no signs. He wasn't recognized, so he entered the park with no problem and walked around freely. He then met up with the Protect NC Kids protesters and spoke to them briefly about what he saw. Then he went back into the park a second time to look around again. After the second time he entered, he approached Nick Broninger, the Indian Trail Parks event coordinator, and some of the Union County deputy sheriffs. And he asked Nick why were certain people being excluded from a public park, to which Nick answered that when an organization pays for use of the park for an event, they have the right to exclude whoever they want. So then he left and spoke to the protesters standing outside the park. Then my husband entered the park a third time, and as he entered, he saw the deputy sheriffs and let them know he was going in one more time to walk around. And at this time, the deputy sheriffs said that it was fine for him to continue to go in. As he walked around, he stopped at an art exhibit, and Crystal Robinson, the founder of the Union County Pride organization, verbally attacked my husband and demanded that he leave the park immediately. He said to her that he had every right to be at a public park and would not leave unless a sheriff told him he had to leave. Then a deputy sheriff came over and said that if Crystal Robinson asked you to leave, then you must leave, and escorted him out of the park. Crystal Robinson infringed on his First Amendment right to peacefully protest at a public park. Were Union County officers working as private security for the Union County Pride organization or for the sheriff's office? They were all in uniform. As the Union County deputy sheriff officers, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. So why were they escorting citizens out of a public park, therefore infringing on their First Amendment rights to peacefully protest? I'm wondering why that occurred. Thank you.
Are there any other folks that have signed up to speak at the informal comments section? All right, the next two items on our agenda are public hearings for rezonings. Before opening the first public hearing, I will read the rules that apply to members of the public for both of these public hearings. Each speaker must address the board from the lectern and begin their remarks by giving their name, stating whether they are residents of Union County, indicating the municipality with which they reside, if any. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make remarks. A tone may sound at the conclusion of your remarks. A speaker may not yield any of his or her time to another speaker. Speakers shall limit their remarks to the subject of the public hearing. Speakers may leave written comments and/or supporting documents, if any, to the clerk or with the clerk to the board. The first public hearing is item 24-615 for zoning petition number CZ 2023-007. Couick. I will open the public hearing and recognize Bjorn Hansen, Senior Planner, for comments from county staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Manager Matthews. This is a conditional rezoning request that was submitted in 2023, called the Couick zoning for the applicant. This is a request to rezone one parcel of land near the intersection of NC 200 and Plyler Mill, southwest of Monroe, for a light industrial zoning to allow business headquarters and warehouse space. There's a site plan that I'll get to. I'll note that the site plan currently has sidewalks along the frontage of both roads. You recently requested a public comment period to be opened to consider a series of amendments, including removing some sidewalks. This site would be affected by that, and we want them to benefit from that removal of sidewalks if that's ultimately your decision. So that's a note in there. Also, this is a phased development, so one of the building areas could be used as storage till the building is constructed. And lastly, that it'll meet all requirements of our development ordinance. This is the site plan. Again, Monroe is to the north. This is NC 200, Plyler Mill. You see two entrances with two separate buildings. This one right here would be fenced in with storage until this building was constructed. The first one's mainly warehousing. The second one's a combination of warehousing and office. In terms of existing conditions, there's a mini storage to the south of it. It's shown here in the upper right. Otherwise, it's a two-lane road, large lot residential and undeveloped. In terms of land development in the area, it's a combination of large lot residential and some undeveloped land. This one is shown with the black boundary. It's undeveloped. In terms of environmental features, there's no floodplain or wetlands on the site. It is forested, however. The zoning of the area, you can see the industrial zoning to the north. This is RA40, like the land surrounding it. In terms of transportation, NC 200 has a fair amount of traffic, approximately 10,000 cars per day. Plyler Mill also carries a fair amount of traffic, almost 5,000 cars a day. Union County has 3 intersection projects that they've identified for safety concerns in this immediate vicinity. You have a lighting project just off the map up here at this intersection of this small neighborhood and NC 200. Another one at Doster and 200, right there at the southwestern portion of the site. And then this is a critical intersection that was designed several years ago as a roundabout. It hasn't been submitted for funding, so it's not a funded project, but it was identified as a congestion and safety concern. There are no other funded projects in the area. In terms of the land use plan, it's all recommended for rural residential, which is the zoning for the majority of the area. In terms of schools and utilities, because it's commercial, Union County Public Schools not consulted for comments. This would utilize water and a septic field for the office. In terms of public feedback, a community meeting was held in early August. One attendee just had questions about how their driveway access would affect theirs on the other side of NC 200. No changes were made as a result of the meeting. No comments were made by any members of the public at the August Land Use Board meeting. Monroe was not consulted because it's not that close to their municipal limits. Overall, we recommend denial due to a combination of traffic safety and consistency with the land use plan. We will note that there is a light and north, and this would have access to an NC route, which is certainly ideal for truck traffic and will increase business opportunities for an existing business in Union County. The Planning Board did recommend approval, citing the opportunity for increased business opportunities in Union County. So the applicant is here to answer any questions if you have any.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions, Bjorn. So if I understand this correctly, the applicant is applying for this rezoning to support a local business for
Yes, sir.
storage. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you did say that the other parcel, if you can just go back to the map, there we go. So this highlighted area here to the north, that's already zoned light industrial. Is that also correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, so is the owner of the one highlighted the one requesting the adjacent property for storage, or is this a different
It's a different owner.
owner? Okay. And to confirm, the Land Use Board recommends approving it, but
That's right.
staff is recommending to deny it because of safety concerns in those intersections that you pointed out.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you. One final question, Bjorn. So, and you may have had this, I just didn't get the number. Are we estimating significant truck traffic, if this was to be rezoned?
It's a function of how well business is. The applicant can describe their current operations because it is going to move an existing operation to this site, so they can talk about the specific traffic. But it's not very much. It certainly wasn't enough to require a traffic impact analysis.
Okay.
Does the applicant desire to provide comments?
Hey, how's it going? My name is Tyler Couick. I'm the owner and president of Beta Tech LLC. We're a telecommunications company. We currently operate out of Monroe, North Carolina as our headquarters, but we have a national footprint across the United States, helping out with integration support, engineering support for 5G networks as well. We're really growing in the fiber optic space around this area, which, as you know, whenever we had COVID, there was a lot of demand for wireless networks and data to help out with the school systems and meetings. Everything kind of went remote. And luckily, since then, a lot of businesses have used the same thing as like a hybrid system, so we're needing the data. But it's a really key location for us. Most of my employees are located around the Union County area. My office staff, their kids go to Parkwood High School, so it's really nice for like whenever the schools get out, they can run, go get their kids, take off for the day, work the rest of the day from home. So it works out well for us. We're in the telecommunications infrastructure, so when we have outages, we have a 2-hour response time to get to the outages and start getting it back up. So we primarily cover from Charlotte down to Rockingham County, so it's a very nice area. We're all local here, so we can get to the office, get to our trucks, and get out there and get everything restored as needed. So.
Mr. County Manager.
Thank you very much. Can you tell me a little bit more about the area that is deemed as storage until a future building's to be built? What kind of storage? How long before that future building's intended to be built? Give me a little more information on that.
Okay. Yeah, the second phase is the smaller warehouse at the top. It would be a gravel lot, and it'd primarily be to store trucks, cable reels, conduits, manholes, handholds, stuff of that nature.
Do you have a time frame of when you would like to build the actual building?
If we build the extra building, that means business is going really good, especially in the engineering side of it. So hopefully in the next 3 years, but I don't really see that, to be honest with you. It's more of a 5-10 year time frame. But we would like to have it for future growth.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Couch? Commissioner Balkle.
Just out of curiosity, how many people do you employ?
I have 20 employees currently in the North Carolina area. I have probably a total of 35 across the state, and I use a lot of subcontractors as well, from Charlotte down to Indian Trail. So I use quite a few companies around this area as well.
I guess my better question would be, how many people do you foresee coming in and out of this property on a daily basis?
On a daily basis, probably 5 to 6. Monday mornings is our big rollout day, so we bring everybody in for the safety meetings on Monday morning, get everybody going, get out to their job sites, and then Friday they pretty much come back. The only trucks that we really get in is when we take deliveries from customers, which is usually only once, maybe twice a week.
And those trucks, would they be tractor trailers, straight trucks?
They are trucks with flatbeds. They bring them in flatbed trailers. We take them off with our equipment.
And you would use both Plyler Mill and Morgan Mill for ingress and egress, correct?
We would use Plyler Mill to take most of our cable reels in for delivery. Our warehouse will be for like telecommunications equipment, for like networking, routers, switches, stuff of that nature.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Lancaster Highway on that side, south side of the county, Commissioner Balcom. I think you got that mixed up with Morgan Mill. You're a northerner. Just kidding. Any other questions for Mr. Couick? Thank you, Mr. Couick.
Thank you for your time.
No one has signed up for to speak at the public hearing in this situation. Is anybody that hasn't signed up for this particular public hearing that wishes to speak? I will now close the public hearing. The next public hearing on our agenda is item 24616 for rezoning petition number CZ 2023-004 Bamber. I will open the public hearing and recognize Bjorn Hansen, Senior Planner, for comments from county staff.
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask if the board would be open to hearing a request from the applicant to have it placed on the business agenda tonight for a decision if there weren't any concerns.
So this was the previous rezoning. They're just asking if you would consider adding that item to the agenda for the board to consider. It is possible for you to waive your requirements, and then typically, if that's requested, it's because there has been no opposition raised at the public hearing. Sometimes the applicants will ask for the board to consider that. So the previous rezoning is the one they're asking, would you consider adding that to the agenda for consideration?
Okay, so not this item here, but the previous one, the Couick rezone.
That is correct.
Mr. Kay, is there a problem with that?
Under your rules, you are permitted to examine an item, vote on it on business if there was no opposition stated during the public hearing, and there was not during the previous item. So it's within the board's discretion if you want to put it on business for this evening or to move it 2 weeks down the road. You have that option.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Kay, so do we need a motion then to put this on business for tonight?
You would need some sort of a motion to get it on the business agenda, and you could do that either now or in a few moments when you're considering the agendas for the rest of the evening, both consent and business. We typically take that time to make agenda adjustments, although there's nothing that prohibits you from doing it now.
Okay, well, I mean, my opinion is I don't have a problem with putting it on business. I think that we'd probably just wait until we entertain the business agenda and add it at that point.
This rezoning is 2023-CZ-004, the Bamber rezoning for the name of the applicant. Again, this is a conditional rezoning. It's a similar request to go from residential to light industrial. This is in the other part of the county towards Mecklenburg in the Goose Creek Township to construct an outdoor storage facility with 90 spaces for recreational vehicles, trailers, and boats. Be limited to the site plan that I will present, as well as a stormwater facility as shown in the site plan, and meeting all of the development standards from the Union County UDO. This is the site plan. What was submitted to the community last month had a row of spaces here. Based on feedback and concern about intensity, this row was removed, and so the number of spots was reduced from 135 down to 90. The Emerald Lakes subdivision is over here, and this would be the access point. In terms of existing conditions, you can see the neighborhood, 2-lane road for Rock Hill Church, and then the site, undeveloped, largely cleared, but there are some forested In terms of development status, you can see the subdivision to the west and largely undeveloped to the east with residential to the north. In terms of environmental features, there are no floodplains, streams, lakes on the site. It's largely cleared. In terms of zoning, the gray areas are inside a municipality. You have Stallings over here. You have, I believe, Fairview over here. And the green and the light green are different densities of residential. This portion in the middle was a industrial rezoning to address a legal non-conforming lot from the 1970s that was rezoned several years ago to bring it into conformity with zoning. In terms of transportation, these are fairly low volume roads. There's no established traffic count for this part of Rock Hill Church. Union Road has a traffic count established on it, but it's only 250 vehicles per day. This site is shown with the dark black outline. There are no funded road improvements in the area. In terms of the land use plan, Stallings is grayed out. For the remainder, it's rural residential. In terms of schools and utility coordination, Union County Public Schools were not consulted for comments, and this site would not utilize water or sewer. So Union County Water was not impacted. In terms of public feedback, community meeting was held in early August with 12 attendees. They expressed a variety of concerns about security lighting, hazardous fluid runoff from motor vehicles, impacts on property values. The site was adjusted based on that feedback to reduce the number of lots. Received over 24 emails after that meeting expressing opposition to the rezoning, citing similar concerns. 8 residents spoke, all in opposition at the Land Use Board meeting. Stallings was consulted for feedback. They opposed the proposed use, stating it's not near their adopted industrial areas in their land use map. So based on this information, we're recommending denial, citing the inconsistency with the land use plan, the traffic impacts that would be above what would be expected for rural residential uses, and the fact that it has a lot of excess space in the site. It could become a code enforcement burden if more than 90 pieces of equipment are stored on site, and we have to go out and verify that periodically. We would note that the positives are that there is an existing business nearby, and it would increase business opportunities to serve nearby households within the county. Planning Board recommended denial, citing many of the same concerns as the residents. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. The applicant is here as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Bjorn, thank you. This may be better served asking of the applicant himself. But in our packet, there was something that I had a question about. So as I understand it, when this property was purchased by the applicant from the HOA, I believe that was Emerald Lakes HOA, the information that we have is that the reason, or that the applicant has stated that their future plans for that property was for personal use. And so that sort of drove a question in my mind as to, what has changed and what the applicant deems as personal use.
We received that document. We also received another one from the applicant that was in conflict with it. There's some confusion about what is the current one, but regardless, we do not enforce deed restrictions. It's a private matter. So it was information, but we couldn't consider it in our decision, or recommendation rather.
Any further questions for Mr. Hanson? Would the applicant like to make comments, provide comment?
Good evening. My name is Bamber, and I'm the owner of the the property mentioned before. Regarding that personal use, if that's the question about it, I literally sold that when we had a last meeting, then I sold it on a contract. It was written as a personal use, so whatever the personal use was, I was not aware of signing when I purchased the property. So when that goes. And the only reason why I came to conclusion to try to rezone it because the property would not perk. That's the founding that I found after I purchased it. So that's why I figure out why not try to do the best usage of the property.
Mr. Chair, isn't the reason that the land was put up for sale was because the land wouldn't perk, and then you purchased it, knowing that the land wouldn't perk?
As far as I know, I knew the land would not perk.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions for Mr. Bamber? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We have a number of people who've signed up for the public hearing to speak in this matter. Our first speaker is Ben Gear.
No, that was, we were just in attendance. There was another one that said it was, at least that's what the lady told us. So no, we're not speaking, but we are with MLA.
All right. Well, I'll call out these names who've signed up here. If you'd like to speak, just come forward. Diane Gear,
That's me.
Barry Lindenman,
I'm Barry Lindeman. I've been a resident of Emerald Lake in Union County for 23 years. I am a retired CPA, and there's an expression in my industry that sometimes people lie, but the numbers don't lie. The numbers are what they are, and the numbers that I am going to publicly communicate to the board come straight from the Union County website. And sometimes people make purchases of real estate as an investment, and that appears to be the case in the case of Mr. Bamber. He purchased the property in August of 2022 for $150,000. However, the most recent property valuation of 724 Rock Hill Church Road in February was $87,700. So that represents a 41% decrease in the value of his property. So it's clear to me that Mr. Bamber is trying to mitigate a financial loss by converting a residential purchase into a money-making storage facility to house up to 90 or 100 boats, RVs, trailers, whatever it is. Unfortunately, you can't change the rules of the game for a financial decision when the game isn't going in your favor. And I don't think the residents of Emerald Lake should have to bear the burden of one individual's financial investment in terms of lower property values, safety, security, and traffic concerns, as well as the aesthetic value of our beautiful and highly respected residential community in Union County. And finally, I would beg to differ. That I would offer that I'm sure Mr. Bamber does not live in Emerald Lake, because if he did, I'm sure he would express the same concerns that I'm expressing to the board right now, and I'm sure that other residents will express as well. Thank you.
Jeff Williams.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Williams. I'm a born and raised resident of Union County. I've lived in the Emerald Lake subdivision for the last 20 years. My property backs up immediately to the property in question. My house is right there.
I want to speak to essentially three reasons why I'm against this rezoning effort initiative. One, it's very personal to me. My residence is right there. My family, my wife and I just completed a deck addition, a covered deck addition, a very substantial investment to our property that looks out immediately into our yard and this property. I'm very concerned about the noise and light pollution that would affect our property, our experience, and our property value. One of the last reasons I like to speak against this is safety. With the construction of the traffic circle off of Lawyers Road, once shut down Lawyers Road, all of that traffic diverted down Rock Hill Church Road, and it was quite substantial. There were a number of accidents and near accidents right there at the entrance to our neighborhood and where my property sits. While that's been resolved, that exposed a safety issue that I feel like is going to be very substantial if this is allowed to be built, which is about 150, 200 feet to the north of this property. You have the Union Road intersecting into Rock Hill Church Road. Rock Hill Church Road connects Lawyers Road and 218. And quite often, it is honestly the Autobahn. Cars and motorcycles and trucks coming off of Lawyers and Rock Hill Church Road use it as a drag strip. Cars coming south off of 218 and Union Road, there is a hill about 150, 200 feet to the north of my property, our entrance, and this property in question. Cars coming over that hill have no time to stop for a truck towing a trailer that's either trying to turn in, left into this property, or coming out. An RV, a car, a truck, anything pulling a trailer is going to need two lanes, both lanes of Rock Hill Church Road, to turn right out of this property. And they're going to run right into any car that's coming over that hill at speed. So there's going to be I just feel like there's going to be a lot of safety issues. Even without this property, I've had two cars coming over that hill in the time that I've lived in this neighborhood that have I built a berm on the backside of my property to kind of just buffer my house from some of the noise and the view. Two cars since I've lived there have wrecked into that berm because they've been coming over that hill at speed. And someone was turning into our neighborhood and they couldn't stop in time. And their only recourse is to go right into my backyard, into this berm. I feel like that's going to be the norm now. And since that road is jurisdiction of the Union County Sheriff Department, they might want to deputize me and our neighbors because we're going to be the first happens, because it's literally going to be in our backyard, and I'll be sitting on my really nice covered deck looking at what happens and unfolds. I know that's in jest a little bit, but that's very practical and safety. And I'll mention one last thing. It's going to seem in counter to what I've just said, but I said this at the last meeting. I am definitely not against small business. I'm not against Mr. Bamber trying to build a business and all of that goes with it. I just don't think this is the right place for it. It's not in the land use, and it doesn't seem very practical given the road and the layout of this property. Thank you.
Sean Benton.
Good evening, I'm Sean Benton. I live in Union County, born and raised here. Survived Union Memorial Hospital some years ago, for those who know. I live at 618 Rock Hill Church Road. 618, when you were showing the pictures earlier, I'm really far off of Rock Hill Church Road. Right now, there's, 3 to 5 boats sitting over there right now. Sometimes there might have been a few more, whatever. Anyway, people come down my driveway, they look at that and they're like, what the Sam Hill? Is there a dadgum? You know, and that's with that. There's 50 acres behind me. It's not disturbed. We've been out there for 24 years. It's the country. It's houses. It's not. I mean, you go over here on the backside of Walmart, there's one of those storage facilities, and I'm sure that's probably zoned for that. That's where, you know, you put them where they belong. You don't go shoving them up in somebody's neighborhood because, hey, I don't live around here. It ain't gonna bother me. It's gonna make me some money, and I'm gonna mess with everybody else's properties, and I don't really care. I'm just gonna do it. Because when he changed his first picture, where he took off all those parking spaces off the front, that was, oh, well, that's gonna make Emerald Lake happy, but he's shoving it in my face. And I matter. I've been out there. I'm an Army veteran. I have raised 4 kids. None of them went to jail. That's a good start, okay? But anyway, but I'm just telling you, you know, and he even got upset at the first meeting, and he said, well, I could just build some houses there. Everybody at the little first meeting, and it was really small, they were like, build houses there, buddy. It's zoned for houses, you know? And he keeps saying, well, it won't perk. Well, I believe, I'm not the smartest man in the truck, but I think you can do mound systems, and there's different systems you can get away with, that you could build a house there, because I know there was a house there at one time. It was bulldozed when Emerald Lake bought the property first. There was a house sitting there. So, you know, you bought the property, it's residential, build a house here, build you 2 houses. But dadgummit, don't put no storage lot in my front yard, I don't want it. And I really appreciate y'all being here, and thank every one of you. Have a good night.
Robert Rossi.
No, I evidently signed in the wrong place, I'll pass.
Kim Stevens.
Yes, I'd like to speak. Good evening, I'm Kim Stevens. I live in the Emerald Lake community. Emerald Lake is a beautiful, quiet, serene neighborhood with beautiful homes and families and dogs, and it's very quiet and peaceful. If Mr. Bamber made this property a parking lot, the lot would be an eyesore for the houses directly across the street, and 8-foot trees and a chain-link fence will not block the view of boats and trailers or whatever else is parked in the parking lot. Mr. Bamber stated in the first meeting that he has already experienced theft on the boats on the property. This could bring more theft into our housing community. It seems Mr. Bamber is already violating residential zoning rules by having boats on his property. He states that these boats are his, but I question how many boats one person needs. So I question whether he'll follow the industrial zoning rules as well. The lot will be gravel. The boats would leak chemicals, gas, oil, transmission fluid into the ground, making it environmentally unsafe. It is proposed to be a lighted lot. There's an ordinance in Union County for the lights, and there are houses, as already been stated, that are right across the street from this very large lot. Rock Hill Church Road is a beautiful backcountry road. It's very narrow to accommodate excessive boat and RV traffic, especially during the holidays when they're trying to move the boats and RVs for their outings. It could cause a lot of congestion and possible accidents, even more so than already is in the area. And Mr. Bamber purchased this lot knowing it was zoned residential, and there are plenty of industrial zoned areas. He should have looked elsewhere, I feel. And lastly, I would like to ask if you would want to have a large parking lot across from your home or your home housing community, you know, to sit and look at that across the street. So that's all. Thank you for listening to me.
John Stevens.
I'd pass. She
Ro-
said it all.
Roseanne Young.
Oh, forget me. I just want to say I could see the boats.
Come on up, ma'am. If you want to speak, you have to come up.
Okay, I'll pass. I think you heard what I said.
Judy, is that Hennion? Hennion?
I'm Judy Hennion. I live in Emerald Lake. I'm a longtime Union County resident. I, too, want to speak about the safety and the fact that anyone who has been around the area of Emerald Lake knows that the HOA bought it to build a swimming pool complex, and it became known that it did not perk. And anyone who's been in the area for any length of time knew that. and to purchase it to build a home, they would know that it was not a buildable project. In addition to that, I agree with all of my neighbors. We don't want to look at such a parking lot. It would be an unkept area, and it is a dangerous area, and we appreciate your consideration for denial of the project. Thank you.
Sylvia Deason.
Good evening. My name's Sylva Deason. I'm a resident of Emerald Lake. My husband and I moved to Union County in 1984. And what all my neighbors have said, I agree with 100%, especially the safety concerns about Rock Hill Church Road. Just two other things I would like to point out that haven't already been covered. This is, Mr. Bamber did purchase this on August the 15th of 2022. And then on June 14th of 2023, just 10 months later, he sent his letter of intent to ask to change the zoning. So it only took him 10 months to know he didn't want the residential zoning to begin with. He wanted to put this parking lot in our backyard. And the only other thing I wanted to point out is, I guess I'm afraid that if this is approved, there's a lot of family land on Rock Hill Church Road. And if we have light industrial there, will it be a domino effect that would cause other people to come in and try, buy up this family land to put more businesses on Rock Hill Church Road? And, we're families. We're a residential area, and we bought our home for a residential area to be comfortable for our families, and that's really the way we would like to keep it. Thank you.
Jim Medley, is that close to someone's name? Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Ramirez Monroe, S. Monroe?
Good evening. I'm Shannon Monroe. I live in Emerald Lake. I've lived there 22 years, and I came to the last meeting. I did not speak because I do agree with everything all of the residents have said. And I definitely am against that becoming part of our neighborhood. I've raised 3 children there. They've gone to high school and graduated college. And I want other families to be able to come into Emerald Lake. We have lots of stroller moms. I want to keep it that way. We like walking. We are very active there. Kids on scooters and bicycles. I want kids to be able to ride out to the end of Forwood and turn around and come back home without having to see that, or either be accosted by someone that is not of the area. And it's all about safety for me, and it's also about aesthetics. I love Emerald Lake, just like it sounds. It's beautiful, it's green, it's clean. I have wonderful neighbors. If my neighbors move, I move. So that's the way it is. And they said the same thing. If I move, they move. So please, please deny this from happening to our beautiful area. Thank you.
Deborah Lipsick.
That was really good.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening. I agree with all my neighbors. I'm also a resident of Emerald Lake. Back when all this conversation started, my husband and I did put together an email and sent it to Bjorn. Hopefully you saw it. Part of what is really concerning is that when I drive in now, the property is always a disaster. It is not cut, it is not maintained, it is not anything. And then to think about a 24-hour access with so many unknown people going in and out, that feels like it threatens my safety and my peace. But more importantly, we did do a diagram and gave you 1, 2, 3, I'll say 6 properties all around the Charlotte area. We are a realtor team, so we're really, really aware of our areas and what's rural versus housing versus what other. And you'll see, if you see my email from August 16th, that all the different areas, whether it's Lake Norman or Lake Wiley or Indian Trail or anywhere in between, anybody that has this type of property, it is away from residential neighborhoods, and it is put in what would be in industrial zoned or, like commercial. So again, that email has all the pictures and all the cities so that you can view it. And again, along with my neighbors, obviously, we hope you deny the request. Thank you for your time.
Are there any other speakers who've not signed up who wish to speak? I will now close the public hearing. Next on the agenda is item 24605, recognition of a Lifesaver Award recipient. I will recognize Assistant County Manager Clayton Boyner for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight it's my pleasure to introduce our latest Lifesaver Award recipient, Heather Howie. She works in our finance department. While on vacation this summer with her family at Myrtle Beach, a woman had a seizure. She fell and stopped breathing. And while onlookers were stunned, Heather immediately jumped into action using her skills learned in her previous role as a 911 telecommunicator. She told one of her sons to call 911 and the other one to wait for the paramedics. Then she began to perform CPR until the woman started breathing again and paramedics arrived on the scene. Heather's quick thinking and response helped save the woman's life, which is why we are recognizing her tonight and are proud to have her as one of our employees. So Heather, if you can come up.
Our next agenda item is item 24631, the Government Finance Officers Association Awards Financial Reporting. I'll recognize Beverly Laws, Finance Director for this item.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. It's going to be the finance show tonight, in case y'all didn't know. This is my favorite meeting of the year, where I get to recognize our finance department for all of the great work that they do throughout the year, making sure our finances are in order, and to recognize us for 2 awards that we have received. We have received the Government Finance Officers Association Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting and the Award for Outstanding Achievement in the Popular Annual Financial Report for our last fiscal year ending June 30th, 2023. The Government Finance Officers Association recognizes us for this award as being judged by a panel, an impartial panel, which means we meet the high standards of the program, which includes demonstrating a constructive spirit of full disclosure to clearly communicate our financial story and motivate potential users and user groups to read our reports. This is the highest form of recognition that a finance department can receive in the area of governmental accounting and financial reporting, and its attainment represents a significant accomplishment by our government as an organization as a whole, and our management and our financial team. When we are awarded this, we are also presented individual awards for our finance staff as well. This is our 12th consecutive year receiving this award in a row. For our popular annual financial report, this is a much condensed version of our financial statements that are easier to read for the average citizen if they want to dig into our financial information for the county. In order to receive this award, you must first receive the award for the financial report, which you all are accustomed to hearing as our audit report. So I am proud that the PAFR Award, this is our 10th consecutive year for this second award also. And many of my staff members are here tonight. I want to recognize each one of them and have them come up as we receive this award. The first person I want to recognize, and I'm going to call her out a little bit, is Miss Trina Horn, if she would still come and stand. Trina has been with the county for 30 years this month. It's a huge accomplishment for her to be with us this long and be this dedicated to help our financial team. We also have Heather Howie with us tonight. She is one of our AP staff members. Abru Krukro, she is our senior accountant who does a lot of the heavy lifting for our financial statements. We also have Kiera McClendon, one of our accounts payable staff members as well. Brady Chaffin, who is our payroll accountant who everybody loves every other week. Shannon McDonald, one of our accountants as well, and Haley Smith, who is our grant accountant.
The next item is consideration of the agenda and the consent agenda. Are there any motions regarding requested revisions or amendments to either the consent agenda or the business agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Romero.
I'd like to make a motion to take action on the rezoning petition CZ-2023-004. I move that the board, one, suspend Rule 29 of its rules and procedures relating to rezoning petition CZ 2023-004, Bamber, and two, add consideration of rezoning petition CZ 2023-004, Bamber, to the business portion of the agenda for consideration of a decision concerning the rezoning petition.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion indicate by aye.
Aye. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chair.
I would also like to add, at the applicant's request, that we add item 24615, that is the rezoning petition for CZ 2023-007 Couick, to the business portion of the agenda, sir.
Any discussion on the Vice Chairman's motion? No discussion. All in favor indicate by aye. Aye. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make to approve the consent agenda as amended and the business agenda as amended.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion by the Vice Chairman indicate by aye. Aye. We are now at the business portion of our agenda. The first item of business is item 24611, Union County 2050 Implementation Recommendations, School Siting. I'll recognize Mr. Bjorn Hansen, Senior Planner, for this item.
Evening again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Manager Matthews. This is the sixth of six presentations on committee recommendations coming from the Union County 2050 Comprehensive Plan. This one is on school siting. As a reminder, the comprehensive plan was adopted in 2021. There were a series of issues that were identified that we wanted to get board direction before we expended time to develop strategies on. This was one of them. We were directed to do so in June of 2022. I'm sorry, in 2021. Committees completed their work in June of 2022. The planning board made a recommendation. And so for this body, you can approve, amend, or deny any of these recommendations. You're really giving us guidance on how to proceed with these strategies, on how you want them to be considered and implemented, if that's your direction. And I just went over this information. So moving right along, this slide, again, we have all these strategies that were considered. You'll note that there's different colors over here. There were some that were considered that didn't make it out of committee, and the planning board therefore didn't take them up. Conversely, there was one that the committee did not consider, but at the request of the chair, she presented it to the planning board. The planning board agreed with that recommendation, so it made it in. And you can see the voting. So for the ones that made it out of committee, it was unanimous. For the planning board, I assume 5 people were present that night and 4 voted in favor. So in no particular order, these strategies are meant to address school siting. And when I say schools, I mean K through 12, public, private, charter. Currently in Union County, schools are allowed by right. We don't have any additional standards or approvals that are required. Certainly a traffic impact analysis would be conducted for schools over a certain size, either by the county or by the NCDOT, and some improvements might be made, but otherwise they can essentially go into any zoning district. So the first one is a proposed text amendment which would require 2 or more driveways into a school site. Right now, you could have a school with just 1 entrance. And we have examples of where that's been challenging to serve with just 1 entrance, and so the request would there to be 2, and they don't necessarily have to be on separate roads, but definitely have to have separate entrances. The second one is how a school gets allowed to proceed. If it's not allowed by right, you could require it to be rezoned to a different zoning district where it's allowed, or you could make it a provision that a special use permit is required for a school to be approved on a specific piece of land under a certain zoning. That would go through the Board of Adjustment, which is a duty of the Land Use Board. They meet findings of fact. It's very cut and dried. If you meet these conditions, you get your approval. And so this is something that some communities do. Some communities limit it to certain zoning districts. But coming out of this committee, they recommended the special use permit process be used. I will note that we have coordinated with Union County Public Schools about this overall set of recommendations from this committee, and out of all of these, this is the one that they have some heartburn over. The next one is about buffering undisturbed natural area from the main access road, essentially having it set back from the road itself. And you might say, well, inside the city of Monroe or other municipalities, that might not be appropriate. And we'd agree with that, but this would be for unincorporated Union County, so it's much more rural. So the additional buffering for undisturbed natural area is to respect the generally rural character of a lot of our areas. The buffering for the next one for the side and rear is to set it at 50 feet. Right now, your setbacks are actually based on the underlying zoning that you have, whether it's residential large lot, whether it's residential small lot, whether it's commercial or even industrial, which doesn't make a lot of sense because a school is a school. So we're proposing that the buffering be set based on the use, not the underlying zoning district. The next one is a recent rule, and this came into effect probably 5 or 6 years ago, that the general statutes for North Carolina were amended to make the North Carolina Department of Transportation responsible to pay for all road improvements required as a part of a school site. Previously, a school was just like a residential development or a shopping center or a factory. If they had road improvements that were needed, turn lanes, signal potentially, geometric improvements to access their site, it would be the responsibility of the site. And this law makes it so that the North Carolina Department of Transportation pays for it. The problem is, they weren't given any money to do it. So considering that there are only so many things that the DOT can do, we felt that this was essentially a subsidy that previously didn't exist. And so this would be advocacy. We would have to speak with our legislators to ask for this law to be changed. The next one is about play areas in the side and rear buffers. It was kind of an olive branch. If this area is going to remain undisturbed and you're going to have additional land that may be required for a site, the kids should be allowed to play in it. And so that was recognized. So natural surface play areas can't be turned into a ball field or a paved play area, but natural surface play areas. The next one again is a requirement or a request that came from the planning board for sidewalks in front of all new schools. We would say that at a staff level, we require sidewalks when appropriate and when required as a part of consistency with our comprehensive transportation plan, which is currently considering being amended. So sometimes we require sidewalks and sometimes we don't. But they were requesting that sidewalks be required in front of all schools. The next two were ones that were considered and didn't make it out of committee. First one is to allow schools only on certain classifications of roads. This might be maybe you have to be on a 4-lane road, or you have to be on a collector road or higher, or you're not within a residential district. It depends on how we classify the roads. There's different ways to classify them. But the fear is that you could have a hypothetical of a school being put in a residential neighborhood at the end of a dead-end road on a cul-de-sac, for example. Say you had a 10-acre piece of land, you could put a school at the end of that, and that might not be appropriate. Of course, the special use permit might address that, but if that recommendation wasn't implemented, then you'd be back to this situation. The next one was a consideration of providing some form of transportation service. Transportation is one of the biggest impacts of citing a school, and Union County schools and some of the charter and private schools provide busing. Most of the schools that are not Union County Public Schools do not provide busing, therefore they have higher traffic impacts. However, from a practical perspective, if you're a charter or a private school, you have a very large footprint. Often it's difficult to efficiently pick up students to go to those schools, and also following it. How would you confirm that that was actually being implemented? So we didn't feel it was a practical recommendation, and the committee agreed, as did the planning board. So these were the recommendations that came out of this process. These are completely a la carte. You can choose any of them, all of them, none of them, but we're asking for your guidance so that we can move forward with any potential text amendments or other actions that would come out of this set of recommendations.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. County Manager.
Yes. So I just want to add, Bjorn had said this, but the board would have to give us some direction. We'd then have to go create the text amendment, bring it back, and the board would then, we'd hold a public hearing, board would adopt any ordinances, and so that takes some time, obviously. I did want to point out that the require special use permit, there are other ways to actually accommodate these regulations without requiring a special use permit. They can be made performance standards and put in the ordinance that way. So be aware that if you like some of them but you don't like others, there may still be ways to do some of the regulations without requiring a special use permit. So just wanted to point that out so you had some context for that.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Mayor.
Having come from being on the Board of Education and sitting on facilities for 8 years and being the chair of facilities, I was a little taken back by this because I know that Union County Public Schools comes to the county and is such a good steward in citing schools and partnering with the county and doing all of these things and more. I was going to request that Union County Public Schools be exempt from this, because if the true concern is charter schools and private schools perhaps not partnering with the county or being a good neighbor and having traffic concerns and visibility concerns, why not just make this a school siting for private and charter schools? Because Union County Public Schools is already doing it. So I was just going to request staff to take that into consideration as input from me, having served for 8 years on facilities and with Union County Public Schools. If they're not the problem, then let's don't make it more difficult for them to already be good stewards and good partners with county staff in citing their schools. Let's just call it what it is and have these guidelines for private and charter schools.
Mr. Chairman, and I certainly appreciate that, and I would defer to Jason, but I think that unfortunately we cannot treat schools differently. If we can, that would be wonderful. But I'm not aware that we're able to actually create regulations specific to public schools versus private schools. So I'd want to have Jason and the legal staff look into that and make sure that we can do that. But I want to make the board aware, I don't know that we actually can regulate it that way. So that's my concern.
Mr. Manager, we would be happy to look at that. We have not examined that issue in the past, and certainly not in connection with the school siting recommendations, but we're happy to take that up and try to get some information back for everybody to consider.
Okay, thank you. I'll just say again, you know, why create rules for Union County Public Schools when they're already doing this and more? Why not just address the problem? And the problem is, you know, pop-up private schools or charter schools that do not work with the county before they cite a school. I mean, quite frankly, this is an insult, I think, for the work that's done by Union County Public Schools and the school board, because they have been such good stewards with the county.
And I hope no one from schools takes this, public schools, as our attack on them. It is absolutely not intended that way. I want to make that very clear. These are issues we deal with other entities and not with Union County Public Schools.
So again, the heartburn that's already been addressed is, you know, the special use permit. So I would just encourage staff, and you've already offered, you know, some recommendations, but that's my request. Can we exempt Union County Public Schools? I'll leave that to General Counsel, whether we can or cannot, and then decide how we want to do the special use permit, because the public schools are already doing this.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Vice Chair.
I'm in agreement that, you know, with Commissioner Merrill that, you know, we should look into the legalities there. Just for clarification, are we looking at potentially then just tabling these items until we get that clarification? Or should we proceed, you know, with the understanding that, that this may change once we get clarification from legal staff?
I don't know if that's a
looking
question
for
for
input
me, but
from
I
the
think
board.
that's more board.
I'm looking for input from the board on whether you want us to bring you back that information first, which is perfectly fine, or if you want us to move sort of in more, you know, we're moving at the same time. We're getting information about this, and we're moving forward with doing text amendments so that that information comes to you sort of simultaneously. It's up to the board either way.
Mr. Hanson, did you say really the one that the public schools had an issue with was to require a special use permit. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Other than that, were they good with those other?
That was the only one that
Okay.
we received feedback on.
Okay.
I think it would be helpful if the request is to make the special use permit go away, either for all schools or all non-Union County Public Schools, some guidance in terms of some guardrails, some performance standards that would result in appropriate sites would be really helpful. What are the kind of worst-case scenarios that you're looking to avoid? Because that's really what the special use permit does.
I got the impression it had a lot to do with turn lanes, roads, visibility, meaning sight of distance, entering or leaving the school, so.
That would be one aspect of it. There's really 5 findings of fact in terms of impact on property values, harmony with the surrounding areas, the ability to serve with, community facilities and infrastructure, et cetera. So it's a more holistic assessment. So certainly the transportation is going to be one of them, but it's also going to be, consistency with surrounding areas, like that hypothetical about putting a school at the end of a large lot residential neighborhood cul-de-sac.
Right.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah, looking at these, personally, if we're discounting any kind of consideration about separation of these requirements from public schools, charters, and private schools, looking at some of these, I think that some of these are pretty simple. Like the first one, to require 2 or more driveways in the school sites. I can tell you, our public schools are doing this. UCPS is doing this already. I wouldn't have a problem with, looking at some of those items, like the first one, requiring 2 or more driveways. I'd look at number 3 here, increase buffers to 75 feet of undisturbed natural area from the main access road. I would argue that I would like to see it be 100 feet, rather than 75. Again, our partners there with UCPS are already doing, buffer zones, to that footage. So I don't see any kind of direct impact to what they're doing. Increase buffers to 50 feet of undisturbed natural area for side and rear part of site. I have no problem with that recommendation either. This next one, the advocate for modification of General Statute 136-18 to remove NCDOT responsibility to pay for road improvements as part of county legislative agenda. As I understand it, and Bjorn, I think you made a great comment there that, it sounds great, but in reality, we don't have the funding to make that happen. And with what little bit of funding that we get, I think that oftentimes what we see is that NCDOT is providing us with, their minimum standard, as far as any kind of road improvements are concerned, and it's very much lacking. At the same time, it's also my understanding that in the past, what we've done is we've, before this change was made, that the school system actually paid for their own road improvements, and then that would be packaged in with the cost of a school. And likewise, with something like that, if we take that issue up and advocate as part of our legislative agenda to remove that responsibility from NCDOT, well, we can probably do a better job, in all honesty. And that may have some impact on charters and private schools, because as I understand it, they would have to pay for those road improvements. But at the same time, personally, I don't have a problem with doing that, with removing, that modification and adding that to our legislative agenda. Because at best, I think that we've seen only minimal efforts being made, largely due to funding, but minimal efforts from NCDOT. Allow natural surface areas, the next item here, in the 50-foot side and rear buffer areas. Again, no, I personally don't have a problem with that. You know, I think that that's kind of a no-brainer there if you've got those buffer areas. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, aside from the special use permit, which that seems to be a point of contention, I'm okay with the first item, the third item, and then all the way down to the part where we get to require sidewalks for all new schools. I think that this kind of gets into an area where we might need some more information from staff. You know, there's going to be some school systems out there, or some schools that it may make sense to have sidewalks for, you know, where you might have existing sidewalks, you know, maybe you have a requirement to connect to those existing sidewalks. You may have other schools, though, where it doesn't make a lot of sense to require that. And so, correct, like Fairview, and then I'm sure that there's other, you know, elementary schools and other schools in our county as well. So, you know, that one, I would argue that we just table that until we can get additional information from staff to determine, you know, where those should be required, and maybe get some more data for us to consider before we go into that one. You know, allow schools only certain classifications of roads. You know, me and our county manager, we had a brief discussion about this today, and, you know, on the surface, I think that this sounds great because, you know, ultimately what you want to do is you don't want to have a school right there on 74 and have, you know, car line backed up blocking a major highway. But at the same time, you also don't want to have a school and have car line backed up in, you know, a housing development. And I'm just, you know, giving some for examples here. But how do you qualify that? You know, how do you determine what roads are okay and what roads are not? And so I think that if the board wanted to take a look at that, well, that would require a lot of effort, probably on staff's part, you know, to come back with some information for us to consider. You know, requiring schools to provide some form of transportation service, I love that idea. Absolutely love the idea to do that. Now, there may be legal concerns to that. And so, you know, I don't know that we can tackle that one today. So, you know, aside from Commissioner Merrill's request to have legal look at, you know, these requirements and how they may apply to, you know, both public schools, private schools, and charters, you know, I think that there is at least some common ground here with some of these items that we can take up today, and then, you know, potentially look at how they apply to different schools, depending on what legal has to say about it. But I would be okay with tabling the whole thing, you know, if that's the will of the board as well. But, you know, again, some of these I think are pretty simple, and I wouldn't have any kind of issue with them.
We could potentially approve 1 through 6 and eliminate number 2, table number 2.
Okay.
You want to make that in the form of a motion, Mr. Vice Chair?
Go ahead.
Okay. I will make a motion to approve number 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6 tonight for school siting recommendations, with the understanding that number 2 requires special use permit be tabled for staff to continue working on that.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Mr. Chair, if I can offer one friendly amendment to Commissioner Merrill, I would also like to add to her motion that we direct staff to bring us back more information on the sidewalk requirement, if you would be amenable to that.
I know some schools can't have sidewalks, like if they're on Highway 601 or so.
And just to clarify, that's exactly where I'm going, is,
Okay.
is what I'd like to do is I'd like for staff to bring us back information about how we can,
Encourage?
not necessarily encourage, but not make this an overwhelming requirement for where it's not feasible for schools to require these sidewalks. It's not
Because
feasible.
tonight it says require. What would you change that to?
My motion, or my addition to your motion, my friendly amendment, would be to table that for tonight.
Oh, okay.
And then ask staff to bring us back more information about how we could, apply some semblance of, sidewalks, but only where needed. So where feasible, I guess, is where I'm trying to go with this. So not a requirement, but, empower our staff to bring us back more information so that we can,
So you want to so we will table sidewalks with the special use program for staff to bring those two items back to us at a future meeting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I definitely accept that friendly amendment.
Any discussion on the motion with the friendly amendment?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think when you're reviewing recommendations like this, it's pretty important to think about what scale you're talking about, the scale of the school. As we go through these and we think about schools of some sizable scale, a lot of these make sense, I would agree, and in terms of this motion, 1 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. But, when you're talking about schools of much smaller scale, perhaps charters or, private schools, I think it's important for us to think about, might these recommendations that get turned into someday, get turned into requirements, might they be onerous on schools of small scale? And might that be an impediment to those schools getting created? That's an important question. So, I liked the idea that we were entertaining earlier of just tabling this for tonight, and perhaps, over the next month or so, we can have some discussions and maybe adapt some of these recommendations to schools of scale. Because, I agree. I think a lot of these make eminently a lot of sense, but, for schools of more scale, of more size. And we just, again, I think want to take great care with these becoming impediments, to citizens and groups with great civic impulse, that want to start maybe a private school. But, as they discover the heap of regulations that, that come down on them. And aside from this, we all know there are a heap of regulations that you have to concern yourself with. Might it be an impediment? So I would just respectfully ask that we really just table this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Romero.
I just want to say, Commissioner Williams, I do hear where you're coming from on that, and part of me absolutely, we don't want to create a hindrance, but from the conversations I've had with staff, it's kind of a safety issue, especially with traffic and sight of line and vision, and I think we have to have guardrails. Especially with vouchers being such a hot topic right now and everything. There could be more academies built, maybe not in safe locations that are creating traffic hazards. And it is creating an issue for the county, which is why this came to us tonight. So while I absolutely hear what you're saying and agree we don't want to create too many hurdles, but from the safety hazards and the sight of vision, traffic concerns that I learned about last week, I think we do need to move forward with some guardrails. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Williams.
Thank you. If I can just, briefly respond to that. Again, for schools of some size with, fairly significant student populations, no argument. But what if we're talking about a private school with, 25 or 30 students? Does it make sense to have, a 75 foot plus, buffer in front of that as you're facing the main access road, or 50 feet on the sides and back? So, it's just those sorts of things that, does the benefit really outweigh, the impediment and the cost, to maybe a group of parents or an organization that's motivated to start a private school or a charter? It's just those sorts of things that, I would ask that we think about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yes, sir. So I'm going to be in support of Commissioner Merrill's motion. And I think that we need to understand that, right now what we are doing is we are essentially empowering staff with these recommendations to bring us back text amendments so that we can look at and we can further discuss. I think that what we're looking at now is do these recommendations fit the majority of what we're looking at with schools, with new schools? And again, staff would, of course, bring us back more information for us to consider for a final vote. So, whereas I understand where Commissioner Williams is going, and I don't disagree, I think that we still need to move forward with this tonight. Thank you.
Mr. County Manager, how long will it take you to get back with some further information on these? Do you have any idea?
I would say between 30 and 60 days.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion?
Can I make one comment?
Mr. County Manager.
And I appreciate that that Vice Chairman Helms brought up the point about bringing back additional information. And I think what I hear is that there is some interest in the board to understand the impacts on smaller schools. We will bring you back information on what impacts and how we can potentially mitigate those impacts. So it's not just one size fits all, and I think we can bring you back some things for you to think about on smaller schools. So we hear you. I think that is something we can
On
easily
all
do.
these different items?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and support the motion then.
Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion indicate by aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
The next item of business is item 24-621, the appointment of members to a Rural Land Use Plan Stakeholders Committee. I will again recognize Bjorn Hansen, Senior Planner, for this item.
I'm glad I don't have a cold. My voice is doing okay. I don't have a presentation associated with this one, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This is pretty self-explanatory. We received a grant from the state to help us develop a rural land use plan consistent with one of the strategies you approved earlier this spring for the implementation of the 2050 comprehensive plan. We recruited for a steering committee to oversee the development of this plan. It's an 18-month process. We received 8 applicants. We wanted to appoint 7 positions. I didn't feel I was right to just tell one person out, so we kind of punted to you. Our feelings won't be hurt if you appoint all 8, or if you want to be disciplined and keep it to an odd number, we'll accept that as well. Happy to answer any questions you may have about the process, but we would look to get started in the month of October with this committee.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah, so I'm not in disagreement, with Bjorn and what staff has suggested with 8 applicants to this board. Typically we have 7, but I think in this case, we've got 8 folks that have expressed some general interest, in serving. Well, I mean, a lot of times we don't get, quite that many. So sometimes we're struggling to fill seats on committees. And so, with that in mind, I'll make the motion that we go ahead and appoint all 8 applicants. And I'll list the names here. So we have Mick Noel, Danielle Crum, James Alston, Adele Miles, Nick Long, Alan Balcom, Jared Steele, and Laura Varela. So I'll make the motion that we appoint all 8 to the Rural Land Use Plan Stakeholders Committee.
Mr. Vice Chair, I looked over all 8 applicants. They all look like good applicants to me. I agree with what you're saying. Any other discussion on the motion? All in favor of the motion indicate by aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Our next item, I'm sorry, Mr. Matthews, go ahead.
I was going to suggest the board consider, since we have the applicant here for the rezoning, we believe that the next item is about a 15 to 20-minute presentation. So if you'd like, you could certainly move up the rezonings, take action on those 2, and then we'll do the last item again being the presentation on that. That's just a suggestion for you to consider.
That sounds like a good suggestion to me, Mr. County Manager. We'll go to item 24616, CZ 2023004 Bamber.
So, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to approve the proposed amendment for the Union County zoning map CZ 2023-004.
Doing Bamber.
Yeah,
Commissioner Merrill, this is the item for Bamber that is the one adjacent to Emerald Lake.
yeah, this is. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. I'd like to make a motion to deny the proposed amendment for Union County zoning map CZ 2023-004 to deny the motion denying submitted by Ismar Bamber to rezone the property appearing on tax map as parcel 08-312-017B in the Goose Creek Township for RA-40 to light industrial with the conditions to adopt the consistency and reasonableness statement for denial.
Any discussion on the motion?
Mr.
Mr. Vice Chair.
I'll just say real quickly, I'm going to be in support of the motion. We heard from a lot of residents tonight that expressed significant concerns with the rezoning application, and I think there's considerable, question marks here with this, so I'll be in support. Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion indicate by aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The next item is item 24615, CZ 2023-007 Couick, rezoning.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yeah, so obviously, we're hearing this one at the request of the applicant, and I think that, well, first of all, thank you for being here. I appreciated, your comments, and I think that sort of helped the board here get an idea about what you were trying to accomplish. As I looked over the information, there was already, a building there. And that's been there since 1982, I believe, is what information we had. I think that we have at least an opportunity here to approve this rezoning and support some local business. And so with that, I'm prepared to go ahead and make the motion that we approve the proposed amendment, and that would be, hang on a second. The motion would be to adopt the ordinance approving the revision to the official zoning map of Union County, North Carolina, and to adopt the consistency and reasonable statement for approval. So that's my motion, is that we approve it.
Any discussion on the motion? I would like to say I'm very familiar with that area there, and it's a residential area other than the storage building, which there's not much traffic there. That is a very busy intersection. You've got another intersection just south of there, Dalster Road. Then you have Calvary Baptist Church right there just above that. There's homes all along Lancaster Highway there near the intersection. Now, I sure do appreciate Mr. Couick coming up here, and I certainly understand your what you said, and I appreciate you being here, but I think I'm going to vote against that in this matter. I go through that intersection frequently, and I tell you, you really have to be careful because there's a lot of traffic on Lancaster Highway there, and then a good little bit of traffic coming off Fowler Mill Road. Any further discussion?
Could I make a statement by chance?
No, sir. Thank you, though. All in favor of the motion indicate by aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
Nay. Thank you. All right. The next matter of business is the item 24-629, Union County Land Preservation and Easement Program update. I'll recognize Andrew Balcom, County Extension Director, concerning this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Manager, respected members of the board. I appreciate a few minutes of your time this evening to briefly discuss an update for our land conservation and easement program. Okay. So it's been roughly 11 months since Agricultural Services and Soil and Water District for Union County came to this board to present the land preservation and easement program. I wanted to give a brief update as it's been a little bit of time there, and just to refamiliarize the board with the program, our interest, and sort of why we have come to the place that we're at now. So first and foremost, we want to talk about farmland and open space laws in Union County. And you can see from your packet there the startling numbers for North Carolina as well as Union County on the national level for open space loss on an annual basis, as well as the projections for continued loss of open space and farmland with various scenarios for Union County as well as the state. Again, on November 6th, that should be 2023, the Board of Commissioners approved our staff to apply for a trust fund grant through North Carolina Farmland Preservation Trust Fund, approved soil and water conservation to purchase and hold conservation easements, and then adopted Amendment 14
to hold present use value funds for the purchase of easements and associated transaction cost. So that gets us to where we are today. And so with the approval and support from this board, in December, we applied for, in December of 2023, I do apologize for the dates being incorrect on this. In 2023, we applied for this grant with Farmland Preservation Trust Fund. We did interviews with staff for the Department of Agriculture in the spring. In May, we also applied for a facilitation grant through the Working Lands Trust, which is a which is a 501c3 for the Foundation of Soil and Water. We were awarded the facilitation grant through Working Lands Trust in June. In July, we were provided with a template for a baseline for the rules, regulations, policies for Union County's Preservation and Easement Program. And then in August of this year, we were awarded the $15,000 grant that we applied for through the North Carolina ADFP program. So staff has been working diligently since the approval in November to secure funding, to secure time. Working Lands Trust is an organization that has dedicated significant time of their staff to assisting our Union County program and getting it up and running. And so from today, we have several goals in mind that we want to continue with, that we wanted to provide this update to the board. We will continue to work with Farmland Preservation Trust Fund to finalize the long-term plan for Union County's preservation and easement program. I would speculate that we are 80% done with that package. We want to make sure that we set a solid foundation for this using a template that's in place and then working with the Working Lands Trust and their expertise. Following that, we will begin conversations with potential easement clients. The staff have identified a property that meets all of our current ranking system, policies and procedures in the county, that is very well qualified, that we will look to continue moving forward with for a purchased easement. And since last November, when we came to the board and this was approved, we have had numerous property owners reach out to us regarding they would like to donate their building rights and easements for the preservation of open space on their property. And I think that's very critical in showing that there is a strong interest from our community to preserve open space and farmland in the county. Those folks have reached out to us. We have not solicited this program at all. And I think that's very key. The other piece regarding the donated easements is that that is a sector that is not currently in use by other nonprofit organizations. So Catawba Land Conservancy, Three Rivers, there's not a procedure in place to accept donations for conservation easements. So that would be something that is unique to Union County's program. We would like to come back to the board at a later date before the end of this calendar year to request a budget amendment to move the fiscal 2024 PUV rollback funds into our soil and water budget account. And at that meeting as well, our goal is to bring at least one, possibly two easements to the county and to this board for a vote to place those properties in the conservation easement plan and program. Again, this meeting is really a precursor to a later meeting this calendar year, and the goal is to simply bring back the program to the board, what we've done thus far, and where we would like to continue for the remainder of this year. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have, or we can wait till a later time.
Any questions for Mr. Ball?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Dave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When do you expect to come back before the board with the request to potentially transfer these funds and purchase your first easements?
We'd like to do that before the end of this calendar year.
Okay, so
November?
November, okay.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Vice Chair?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions. Just want to take a minute and say thank you. I appreciate the update. You know, I certainly supported this back last year when we made the vote to go down this path. And, you know, I think that the statistics that you've got here are pretty alarming. You know, when you look at the fact that, you know, our state, North Carolina, ranks second in the United States for open space and land loss annually. Union County ranks 13th in the United States for open space and land loss on an annual basis. That's alarming statistics. And, you know, if we can take steps like this, every little bit helps. So, you know, farm and agriculture is so very important to our county. It's of utmost importance to our county. And I just want to say thank you for the work that you've done.
Thank you.
I'll now recognize the county manager for his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, if you haven't heard this, which you probably haven't, the Union County Public Schools has announced a 2-hour delay due to weather conditions for tomorrow. I'm sure that'll get out to all the parents, but I did want to make that announcement. And then also I wanted to just provide some additional information. One of our public comment speakers brought up the issue of the Cuthbertson development and the road improvements. And I just wanted to just talk about that for just a minute. There were a number of conditions that were part of that project that were approved by the board. The road improvements was just one. There were stormwater requirements. They're working through those stormwater requirements as they are required to. Also, a trail system, which the trail system is nearly complete. There are a few things that are not done, but they are nearly complete with the trail system. But more importantly, the people are interested in the road improvements. This particular conditional use permit did not have a defined timeline for when that have to be built. And so currently the developer is behind. It was anticipated that that work would be done sooner, actually before the school year started. There were delays because they did not identify that they had to make a relocation of a water line and a fire hydrant. That put them behind for having to go through that design process. It's our understanding that because of these circumstances, DOT is going to require the work to be done at night, and then that is to reduce the impacts on the area as much as possible. Developers indicated that it's likely a 2-month process, 1 month to relocate the water line and the fire hydrant, 1 month to complete all the improvements, but they've not committed to exactly when that 2-month process would start. Again, there is no timeline that we have in place for that. There are still improvements and things that must be completed for the project, so we will watch them closely. We obviously are going to keep an eye on making sure that they're meeting their obligations as far as their conditional use permit. And we hope that this is done sooner rather than later, but I did want to make it clear we don't have a timeline, and I can't dictate at this point in time what that is. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
It is now time for the commissioners' comments. Thanks to all the board for always putting up with me. Thanks for staff and for all that you do. Vice Chairman Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As always, I want to start out by thanking the speakers that we had tonight. We had a lot of engagement from the public on public hearings and informal comments as well. You know, I want to especially thank the folks that spoke up and informal comments. So we had, the gentleman, Jim Hill, who, was talking about the turn lane requirement that our county manager just touched on. We also had a couple of others. So Michelle Ball and Sophie had spoke, to what they had witnessed this weekend. And, I was kind of hoping that we had Sheriff Cathy in the room. I know that he was here earlier, but he had to leave. He had some other obligations. But hopefully, maybe in our next meeting, we can have Sheriff Cathy maybe give us a few minutes of his time to discuss, the relationship that the sheriff's office does have with these private events. And, it's nothing uncommon for the sheriff's office to do that sort of thing. And so I know Sheriff Cathy would do a great job in explaining that relationship. But I do want to thank both of those speakers, all three of those speakers, for their comments. Thank our staff as well. You guys do a great job for us. Bjorn, you had a lot of items tonight, so thank you for those efforts. And with that, I'll say good night. So thank you.
Commissioner Merrill?
So, yes, thank you for pressing through tonight. A lot of good presentations, good stuff. I just want to say congratulations to Union County Public Schools. Their accountability reports came out last week. There are, I believe, 116 school districts in North Carolina, and Union County Public Schools ranked number 2. Moved up from number 3 to number 2 in the state. And I believe we're somewhere around 115 in state funding. So I just want to applaud the administrators, the superintendent, Dr. Houlihan, the school board, all of our amazing teachers, our principals, assistant principals. Great work. 93.3% graduation rate. And one of my favorite highlights was over 13,000 trade certifications. So, which puts Union County Public Schools, again, number 1 in the state. We like to call it trades. Everyone from my generation, we call it trades, but it's called Career and Technical Education, CTE. But Union County Public Schools, their students, the students earned 13,161 trade certifications, up from 12,900 last year. So amazing work being done by our 53 schools here in Union County, and could not be more proud of the leadership in addressing COVID learning loss and getting our students, if they choose to go straight into the workforce, military, straight into a job, with the skills that they need to stay right here at home in Sweet Union and get to work. So congratulations, Union County Public Schools.
Commissioner Williams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No comments tonight.
Commissioner Vogel?
Yes, sir. I would like to say that I appreciate the protection provided to everyone in this room by our own sheriff's department. Also, I share a burden, or I have a burden for our country. I hope we never go to a place where these attempts on a candidate's life is considered commonplace, or that we're not outraged by these attempts. I just encourage everyone to pray for the protection of these folks that have put their name on the line and stepping up to run for these offices. And would also just like to encourage everyone to be careful going home.
That concludes this regular meeting. Thank you for all who attended. I'm going to move that the board adjourn. All those in favor? Aye.